Welcome to the show.
Hey,
Hi there.
nice to see you.
Great to see you.
Don't you love my background?
Yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
I'm here in Vegas, but I haven't yet ventured onto the expo floor. It looks like you might need a hard hat over there, AM.
A little bit.
Yeah, technically, yeah, it's not even open yet, so.
It looks so great. I'm so excited to go out there and see all of our great. Yeah.
Well, Ron, I hope you'll bring me up a coffee when you're done. But we're excited to talk to you two. Becky, let's hear from you. Introduce yourself, please.
All right. My name is Becky Weiss. I'm a distinguished engineer at AWS. My focus at AWS is in the category of things we call security in the cloud, the features and capabilities that we offer our customers to help them build their workloads, build and operate their workloads securely in AWS. And what that means, a lot of what that means is I spend a lot of time working. I've spent a lot of time over the last decade that I've worked at AWS working on and around identity and access management and permissions and security controls, and particularly in the last couple of years, particularly to data. And that brings us to today's launch. But first, I want to let my colleague Ron introduce himself. Ron, tell them about who you are.
Hi, I'm Ron Cully. I'm a principal product manager for Identity Center. I've been at Amazon now for about 8 years, and I've been working on this area and Identity Center for quite a while. I'm super stoked today because of the new work that we've done with the analytics team. It was really aggressive project, really big magnitude. Becky and the teams worked really hard. We're super excited to talk about it today.
Nice. So Becky, actually, I doubt you remember this, but I do. You and I met years and years ago at reInvent on a segment just like this. And the reason I remember it so well is because you hand wrote an IAM policy live.
That was epic. I did that spot with Nikki Stone. It was epic. It was so much fun. Yes.
Yeah. Me and Nikki used to be joined at the hip.
Yes.
But yeah. Stuck with me. I still think about that.
Well, here you are. So can I tell you a little bit about what we've launched this week and why we're so excited about it?
Yes,
please.
All right. So this is a trend that we've been seeing with our customers in the cloud for the last couple of years. So, we've had AWS since 2006, and since 2011, the permission system to AWS has been identity and access management, IAM, those policies that I was writing live on a stage with AM a couple of years ago. This has been a fantastic permission system for cloud resources. It's really worked well over the long period of time that we've been operating it. And then over the last few years, as customers bring more and more data into the cloud, and not only are they bringing more data into the cloud, into S3 and into our various database services, we've also seen a bit of a change in who our customers are having access that data. So in the early days of the cloud, you had your S3, you had your EC2, and you had your cloud operators, kind of the cloud personnel, various kinds of engineers, DevOps, systems engineers, those kinds of people operating on, EC2 instances and S3 buckets. Those were the early days of the cloud, and those users still exist, and we're innovating. We've actually got some great IAM launches, in fact, this week at reInvent 2023 around IAM. But one thing we've noticed is that as customers bring more and more data to the cloud, they're trying to democratize access to that data. They're trying to democratize things like analytics. They're trying to democratize things like machine learning. Hey, if you look at what our customers are doing, what the industry is doing with generative AI, pretty much the whole point of generative AI is to allow more and more people to get richer insights out of data. So if you start to think about who that is accessing the data now, well, they might be a cloud operator. You want those folks to be able to have access to the data, particularly operational data, but there are a lot of different kinds of business users. And, over the years, we've had a fantastic, rich set of analytics offerings in AWS for a long time. I think the first one a long time ago was Elastic MapReduce, still going strong. For a long time, those systems, and they still do, work fantastically with IAM, Identity and Access Management. That's the permission system for data. But, as you brought these sort of non-cloud operator kind of users, you had to teach them how to step into an IAM role in one way or another, right? And, and as we talk to our customers about how they thought about permissions to the data, well, we at AWS, we've invested greatly in something we call a data perimeter, helping to create a perimeter around your data. But it's not true that everything inside the perimeter, everybody has access to everything. Like if you've ever worked for a corporation, you know that that's not how it works at all, right? Most corporations think in terms of data sets of various kinds, data sets and users and groups who should have access to data. This group works on the red project, and we've got some data for the red project, and so they should have access. And until this week, there wasn't really a way to designate that mapping directly. And that also meant that since there was this transition through this IAM role, it also made audit a little bit harder, because when you audited in AWS who accessed this data set, it looked like an IAM role, and you can definitely figure out what user it is, but it takes a little bit of extra work. So listening to customers for many years on this, this week we have a number of ways in AWS, and I'm going to tell you about one of them in S3 that launched yesterday. Number of ways in AWS where we are now allowing customers to map users and groups access to data sets directly. This is a brand new thing in AWS. It's a really big deal, and we're excited about it because it has all kinds of implications, both on ease of use, ease of management, ease of governance, ease of audit, and it's just how people think about granting access to their data. So yesterday on Sunday reInvent, we launched a feature called S3 Access Grants. So if one of you can bring up the slide, I have just a visual here. What is S3 Access Grants? This is a screenshot of what it is, and it kind of explains what's going on here. It lets so IAM, Identity and Access Management, still very much in play in S3. This is kind of a layer on top of it. But you can see here that I've been able to map folders in S3. Now, if you know something technical about S3, you know that folders don't really exist in S3, but most customers do think that way because it looks hierarchical. I can grant access to these folders in sort of the simplified way, read, write, and I can grant access to IAM identities because, this is AWS. Of course, IAM is supported. But look, I also have a grant to a directory identity group. That means if I'm using IAM Identity Center to bring my identities AWS side, it means I get actually granted this blue folder, this blue data set to the blue directory group. I have a group of people, the group is called blue, and I've granted the access directly. So this enables a customer who either brings their own application or is using Spark on EMR. This enables customers to be able to let these users in the blue group log in as themselves, sign in with their corporate credentials and MFA, not step through a process that's going to be very familiar to them, thinking about all the other corporate apps they use. And then these users in the blue groups will get access to the blue data like they should. And when you audit the access in S3, when you look at our CloudTrail data events, you're going to see the identity of the end user right there in the event. There will no longer be any need to do any post-hoc reconstruction of those events. Now, that's all hypothetical. We actually have a demo for you. So I'm going to turn this. Yeah. Ron is a very brave man. And so Ron's actually going to be demoing for you live. So please, everybody wish him well. And I'm going to turn this over to Ron
Okay.
Yeah, let's see, Ron. Let's see what you got.
Okay. So I've signed in to Identity Center already, and as a user, my name is Paolo, and I work for this company, and I manage a store, and I'm interested in my store sales. So I've got a QuickSight here on my screen. Somebody's giving me access to QuickSight, and when I go into QuickSight, it comes up, and then when I go up here to this top right corner, you can see that I'm signed in. I'm Paulo Santos here at reInvent. And I can go over to my dashboard. And when I go to my dashboard and select store sales, what I see are all the sales figures for my particular store. And that's because I can only see my store because that's who I'm responsible for. I can't see any of the other stores. But we have other people in the company. And one of the people in the company is Jane. And so I'm going to sign out and sign in as Jane. So let me go in here and type Jane.
And by the way, like if your company had Microsoft Entra ID or Okta or any of the things that have integrated with Identity Center, these users would be logging in using their regular kind of single sign-on that they're used to use for any corporate app.
Yeah, that was
right. Yeah,
that was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an important point. Thanks for bringing that up. For the demo purposes, I just created users in Identity Center directly. But like you said, you could use Entra ID, you could use Okta, Ping Identity, you could use CyberArk. We've got several. I think it's around 6 or 7 different identity providers you could use for the system. Now, I just signed in as Jane. Now, Jane's a little different because she's in analytics. And so she needs to have access to a lot of data across the company because she's trying to figure out a lot of things. She has access to marketing data and she has access to sales data. Now, when Jane goes into the sales data, she uses it's the same application that Paulo just used a second ago. But I'm now signed in as Jane. And so you can see here I am, Jane Doe, and I go over to the dashboard and I click on store sales. And this time I see the sales across all of the different stores for all the different categories because Jane has this broader access. Now, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. But let's understand, well, what the heck happened here to make all this go on? So I'm going to pop over here to Identity Center. So I'm now the Identity Center admin, and you can see that I've got these 2 different QuickSight applications, the example sales and example marketing here. And if I go into the groups, you can see.
No worries. Yeah. So, this integrates obviously with a bunch of identity systems, which is how people are managing identities outside of AWS typically, right? I mean, this makes total sense to propagate the identity straight to all these data access, right? Too. We had a question from chat, Becky. Maybe you can cover this while Ron logs back in. How does this affect bucket policies, and how are those set up?
I want to answer that. I want to answer that question. So this works side by side with bucket policies. So the first question I get, I know that the person who asked the question, I don't know anything about you except that you're a security person, which is why you asked me that. You asked me that because you're wondering, this S3 access grants that I showed you, is this an alternative path of granting someone access into the data in your bucket? Because previously that bucket policy, right? If you have a well-configured S3 bucket, that bucket policy, it's in charge. The bucket policy is still in charge, right? If you have deny statement, that bucket policy gets, technically speaking, that bucket policy gets evaluated each time someone comes through the S3 access grants. If you want a little more technical jargon than that, the S3 access grants, what it sits as, it's a policy decider in Zero Trust jargon. The requesters first go to S3 access grants, ask for access to the data, they get temporary IAM session, and from then on, all the physics are IAM. So I'm glad you asked that question, and IAM is still extremely very much in effect here.
All right, Ron, are you ready? Ready for us?
Yes,
back?
I am. I'm back in here. Okay. All right. So I showed you a second ago that we had the applications. So now I'm showing you the groups. Now we've got these different groups. We've got the Store 1 group, and this is where Paulo Santos was. And so Paulo got the permissions of that group, Store 1. If I look at analytics, we can see that Jane Doe is in the analytics group. Now that showed how the group membership got in, but it doesn't show exactly what happened to give them the access. To do that, we've got to go over to Redshift. And if we take a look inside of Redshift, now I'm a Redshift admin, the owner of the data created a set of policies, and there's a couple of roles and policies. Now these roles, you can see here, there's a Store 1 role and an analytics role. And these 2 roles are named the same as the group names that Jane and Paulo were members of. And then there were these policies got attached. And then those got associated with the different data, and we enabled this row level security. And I'm not going to go into all the details here, but that's how the permissions actually got set up, was actually in Redshift. Now, what's pretty cool here is that not only could people access this data through like QuickSight, Jane, because Jane maybe went in and saw that report and saw, oh, I want to go look at this other data. I want to go do a deep dive on the data using a SQL query system, so I can do a custom query. But Jane is, right now Jane's in the console, and the console used an IAM role. So Jane's not known to the console yet. So what Jane does is she can go into the query editor. This is query editor D2 for Redshift. And it has this new feature. It says IAM Identity Center. So if I select this, what this is going to do is it's going to have Jane go back and sign in so that the console, which didn't know who Jane was, can actually get her identity to figure out what she should have access to. So I'm going to finish the
and the really cool thing here is that both Jane's and Paulo's identities made it all the way down. It made it through QuickSight and over to Redshift. The permissions are sitting there in Redshift talking about these different groups in the directory. This is something new. We even have a fancy name for this new capability in Identity Center. It's called Trusted Identity Propagation. This is how we bring an identity through these layers. This is something new, all the way to Redshift, all the way to S3, so that these permissions can be expressed in terms of who you are and not which IAM role you stepped into.
Right. And now I've completed that sign-in process. So now at this point, the query editor knows that I'm Jane. And so it knows exactly what access I should have. I was able to open up and I can take a look at these tables. I could go down here and look at store sales and see what the schema looks like. And if I wanted to, I could just do a query here and it pops open the query window and I can run my query. And now I'm getting the same exact access to data that Jane had when she went through QuickSight. Now, that's all really kind of interesting, but now let's talk about what Becky alluded to earlier, and that's the audit issue. So if I'm going to pop back over here to this other window, and I am going to go into CloudTrail, and I'm going to click on the event history, and what I see here is all these different events, and you can see here's Jane Doe. Jane Doe came in and had to do this sign-in process. We got a credential challenge and a verification, a user authentication, all these different events that are going on, so I can see when Jane signed in. But more importantly, if I go over back into QuickSight and I take a look at, I'm going to go into query monitoring here. First, I'm going to make sure I've got the right, I'm on the marketing cluster. I'm going to go into query monitoring. And I can take a look and see all of the different activities that went on. And I'm going to go find one that timing right here. Okay. And let's see if I got one from Jane here. There's other things going on in the system. This one was not Jane's. Let me find one that was Jane's. Next page.
This is interesting, though, like very granular level of detail that you can come see based off of someone's identity.
Right. Okay, here we go. There we go. This is the important part. We now have a log. It shows exactly that Jane Doe was the person who accessed this data. It's no longer an IAM role. And you can see the SQL query that Jane executed, and that now you can see that the auditors have an ability to see who accessed what. So we can see who can access what by looking at the policies that were set up in Redshift. And we can see that the roles matched up to the groups in Identity Center. So now we know who the group members are. So we can see that Jane was a member of the analytics group. She had access to this particular data, so I know who has access to what. And then in the audit trail, I can see that Jane accessed this data at that time. So that's the demo.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, and like you said, we're really excited. We're really excited both about what we've launched this week, and what we AWS can now do now that we have this ability to bring in identity all the way to the data in AWS. We think it's going to simplify a lot of different ways in which this, much larger and broader class of users is doing ever more ever more with data. So we're really excited to see this come out this week. We've been working on it for quite a while. And the other thing I'll mention is everything here that you're looking at, it's, all fully public AWS APIs, meaning that if you wanted to build an application that access data through S3 access grants, you absolutely can. In the coming days or week or so, we're going to have some blog material on how exactly to do that. Give you a little bit of the cookbook for how to do that. But yeah, we're really excited. So thank you so much, AM and Jay, for bringing us on to.
No, quickly, should we let them know where they can find out some information while they're here at the show?
I think we should let them know. Well, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share my screen again here. I'm going to pop over to a different screen. All right. Nice. First, I want to cover real quickly. We just showed you this demo, which was the QuickSight and Redshift query editor getting in Redshift. But like Becky said, you can write applications that use the Redshift driver. They could authenticate against something like Entra ID or Okta. They get an OAuth token and they can pass it to a new API in the Redshift driver, and it will get them into their data as that user. We also have like the S3 access grants that Becky talked about, where we've got EMR Studio can now be used to access data there, but you could also write your own applications. And Becky wrote an awesome blog that's going to be posted here on how to build those kinds of applications. And we've got a couple of other things that are coming up too. We've got EMR Studio, we're doing queries into lake formation. And we've got some secret things that if you come to a session that I'm doing today at 4 o'clock, I'll give you a little tip on some other things that are coming up really quick. Now, some of the sessions we've got down here at the Venetian today, I'm doing the session at 4. We've got a chalk talk with Camille at the MGM talking about QuickSight and how you use this through QuickSight. But we also have sessions that are going on with the S3 team. We've got the breakout at the MGM, and we got another chalk talk there, and those are happening on Wednesday and Thursday. So you've got time to come in and take advantage of the speakers that are here and ask questions. Please make sure you make the events.
Yeah, that ready to go, Ron. I love it. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us, Ron and Becky. That was a great demo and really very interesting new addition to being able to give access to data sets in ways that people are used to working.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful reInvent, everybody.
Hey, thanks a lot for having us. It's great.